Yo, boys, welcome back. You are missing a lot of fun if you're not watching the World Cup. We like to poke fun. We like to make fun of soccer, but we're also having a lot of fun watching Team USA and the rest of the world compete over in Qatar. I don't know how to pronounce the name of that country, but that's the long way of saying welcome back, Anthony Dabbundo. You hail to us from the Action Network. Great picks out of you, betting on Pennsylvania, your home state or home Commonwealth. But this is your actual forte, your actual area of expertise. Did I say that correct? Do you feel like a soccer hardo that's playing a home game today, talking about betting the World Cup?
Oh yeah, it's real hipster, soccer hipster vibes for me. But and of course Christian Pulisic, the winning goal, a man from Pennsylvania. So we're very happy and proud of our native son. But yes, it's the best sporting event in the world, and I love all the American sports too. So don't come at me and say all these other things. But watching soccer is as good as it gets, and I'm watching in Europe every weekend, and now the whole world is watching, and it's kind of fun when my non-soccer friends are willing to join in for a few months or for a month for the World Cup.
Okay, but talk to me for a second about soccer hipsters because I've always wondered if there's like a quota or a mandate that at least like three players on the U.S. national team have to look like they work at Starbucks when they're not on the field, like the man buns and the tattoos and all of that stuff. Is that just like, do we just have to be cool with that? Is that part of the culture?
Yeah, I think it is. I think soccer players have just always been an eccentric bunch, and I think you would see it more with other sports. I mean, you kind of do. Like the NBA has a lot of funny and weird characters too, but there's just like you also see the players. Like in football, everybody's wearing helmets and stuff. You don't
Yeah,
quite
yeah.
see, and like people express it differently in outfits walking into arenas and whatnot. So there's a lot of athletes are weird. You have to be weird to become a professional athlete at that level in some way. And so, yeah, it's definitely a part of the culture, and they watch the people who came before them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess if I had to pick, I would probably pick the man bun of 2022 over the faux hawk from like the I don't know, I want to say whatever the World Cup that like Spain won. I feel like there was just a lot of faux hawks going on, a lot of like bad EDM music that was feeding into the faux hawks. So I think history does trend upwards on soccer style. Um, Okay, so we're not here to talk about haircuts. First of all, we should address the obvious. What a game! I'm assuming you watched every second and woke up in like a pool of sweat when the game was over. Too. Team USA defeating Iran. We now know we're supposed to call it Iran and not Iran. 1-0. I mean, is that not just the reason why you watch sports?
I mean, if you're first of all, I did just have to reapply deodorant before we started recording, but if you don't understand, like there's a lot of people who when you compare it to like baseball and soccer, and you're like, oh, it's kind of slow. There's not a lot of scoring. Like that's what makes it so special. The scarcity of moments, the drama, the intensity, the fact that every time Iran is lumping a ball into the penalty area, you're like on the edge of your seat because one flick or one weird bounce, and all of a sudden it's 1-1, you're out, right? And that that happens in other sports, but I think more so in soccer because there's so few chances. The U.S. was clearly the better team. I mean, the first half was 9 shots to 0, almost one expected goal for the United States. They ultimately get the goal, and you could tell kind of early on that Iran was having major problems up the wings trying to guard our two fullbacks, Dest
Sergio
and
Dest.
Robinson. Yeah, Serginho Dest getting up the right, Robinson getting up the left over and over and over again. When they're not asked to defend, they're really good. And that's kind of what happened because we had so much of the ball. And eventually the goal comes from there with Dest heading it across to Pulisic. And they had a few other looks before that from that same situation. Dest cross went in, Weah couldn't get on the end of it. Robinson had a cross in that almost got on the end of it again. So they had that was clearly where they were coming for the goals, and that's clearly where they had an advantage. And if you think about kind of the next match, the Dutch have fullback problems right now, so that's going to be really interesting to see how they try to defend. Even though I think they'll have more of the ball than, of course, than Iran did today.
So help contextualize this for people like me who don't know every last thing about soccer. Iran, I checked the FIFA standings, a pretty well-regarded team. The U.S. now a pretty well-regarded team. My understanding is that the Dutch are perennially one of the best and most, just in every sense of the game, they're always one of the teams you don't want to play. I mean, in fact, they played Spain in the final in 2010 or maybe in 2014, did they not? I mean, aren't they sort of regarded as the best nation ever to win a World Cup?
They are, yeah. And when you think of elite teams in Europe, you often think of Spain, Germany, France, England, and then Italy. I think would be, and Italy didn't qualify
Yeah.
for the World Cup because of a
What?
couple weird bounces.
Wow.
Yeah, a
Okay. All
couple
right.
weird bounces. They're out. It's a tough qualification process coming out of Europe for some of these teams. They lost
Yeah.
to Switzerland and then lost to North Macedonia in like a fluke game. But anyway, the Netherlands are often considered the next tier, like the sixth best team in Europe. And what that usually means is that they're consistently like a top 10 or 11 national team in the world. There's, a couple of South American teams, but they've never really broken through. They got to the final in 2010, lost to Spain, got to the semifinal in 2014, lost to Argentina. Like they've been close. They went through a downswell. They didn't qualify for the last World Cup. They went through a couple managerial changes. They brought in one manager last summer for the European Championships. They kind of underperformed there too. They went back to a guy who's managed the team before, Louis van Gaal, who used to manage Man United. So he's got a lot of pedigree. But they haven't been that impressive in the group stage. They beat Senegal 2-0, but they created less than one expected goal. And then they beat Qatar today 2-0, whatever. But they did not look impressive against Ecuador either. So there are question marks about this Dutch team that make them a little bit vulnerable, I think, and more so than I thought they'd be coming into the tournament. I was high on them coming out of this group, thought they would get past whoever came in second, get to the quarters, be dangerous. I'm actually a little bit down on their chances to go deep now after having seen them play 3 pretty mediocre matches.
So, okay, so a lot of the US team plays here in the United States, Major League Soccer, MLS, whatever you want to call it. Increasingly, more and more of these players are playing in Europe, and maybe that's how we can draw a line towards, just having an improved and higher quality team. But I was wondering if you could just, before we get into like the hard numbers of betting, could you just contextualize kind of what quality of competition these American players are used to seeing? Like, are they, if you're playing in the MLS, are those players seeing the level of competition that you would see in like Italy or the Netherlands, or I mean, are they just having to transfer themselves to just another dimension to start playing with these EPL or Bundesliga kind of quality athletes in the World Cup?
Yeah, well, the team that Berhalter named today, every single player was in Europe.
Oh wow!
So, and that's not the case normally. Walker Zimmerman was dropped. Our normal center back plays in Nashville. They have more and more players breaking in. There was the youngest team the U.S. has ever put out at a World Cup. And we could just go across the line. Tyler Adams, who's been our best player at the World Cup, Premier League. Weston McKennie, Serie A, plays in the Champions League for Juventus all the time. Excellent. Pulisic, of course, is at Chelsea. We have a couple of guys at like lower leagues, but even Tim Weah is one of Lille's better players. He plays in France. He was in the Champions League last year. Our fullbacks, Dest was briefly at Barcelona. Now he's at Milan. So he's playing, one of the better teams. Anthony Robinson starts every match for Fulham. Same with Tim Ream. So they got a little bit of a partnership there. Our goalie, Matt Turner, is the backup at Arsenal. So these are names that you don't even have to be a soccer fan. You've heard the name Milan and Arsenal and Chelsea.
Yeah.
Like that's the difference, right? Like big clubs in Europe, the best teams in the world want our players now because they realize that they're much better than generations past. We used to have a couple of guys that were in Europe and were good. Clint Dempsey, for example, was always in the Premier League as like a squad player, sometimes like a star for Fulham, but like a lower level team in the Prem. Now, we're getting squad players on like the better teams that are making Champions League appearances. So I think that's the main difference. There is a huge jump from MLS to, the top 4 or 5 leagues in Europe, but even MLS is getting better. I think it's a big part of it too, is as interest grows in soccer, MLS gets bigger, youth development is getting better. There's more eyeballs, there's more money, like all of that goes in. And MLS has definitely improved in its quality. The one thing the MLS has right now is that it's become a bit of a retirement place for some of the old aging stars.
Yeah.
Messi is the new name. Everybody's saying Miami. I don't know, but that's one thing I think they'll always have a little bit of because it's a big market. It's America. It's a lower level, like big cities, LA, New York. Like there's a chance for these marketable stars, but in terms of the quality of the league, it's also improving. So it all factors in.
Yeah, so I got the sense watching this game today that the sort of first line or the starting rotation, whatever the right words are for the United States, is more or less comparable to a good team in Europe. The bench maybe is just not as deep. Like the players that we were putting in off the bench, Shaq Moore, the announcers on Fox just love to trash Shaq Moore, but I mean, I guess he trashed himself a little bit today. It just seems like there's not this sort of second line of world class players that the U.S. is fielding yet, but still just like a huge improvement over even a few years ago, I would say. Um, uh, okay, well let me ask you. So let's actually talk about betting on the World Cup. So I guess when we start talking about this tournament and all of its history, maybe one of the most important things to address at the outset is um, who's cursed? Aren't there like a bunch of curses that hang over the World Cup? Like, isn't it basically physically impossible for England or Lionel Messi or Australia to win a World Cup? And I am only asking that half jokingly. Like that, I mean that does influence play on some level, maybe.
Well, England likes to laud themselves as the creators of football. So
Yeah.
the joke every year is it's coming home because they did win in 1966. They have not won since, and that they have been cursed because people dispute the claim that they founded football. And
Mm.
England also has a lot of cultural imperialist history. So a lot of people don't like the British Empire and the English, and for those reasons, and so they want England to fail. And England has failed at just about every World Cup turn. In 2010, 2014, they were pretty poor. Got smashed in 2010 by Germany. 2014, they go out in the group stage. 2018 was when they finally turned the corner. The path opened up for them. All they had to do was beat Croatia to make the final, and they blew a goal lead and lost and went out. This is the deepest England team they've ever had, though. And I think that they're going to be very dangerous and tough to beat in the knockout. But they're on the path with France, who has a separate kind of curse because Paul Pogba, who's one of their stars from the last World Cup, his brother put a curse on him.
Oh.
There was some kind of weird thing, and he got injured, and then he missed the whole World Cup, and now he's out, but they're still playing really well. And France is the defending champs. There's also the curse of the defending champs. Defending champions have not fared well. And then, Leo Messi, it's with him, it's more like
he has to be cursed. Don't we just openly talk about
There's
this?
only a World Cup every 4 years, and he's played in 5. And Argentina got to the final in 2014, and Messi played okay, but not great. They lost to Germany. Like, the margins are super small in soccer, and so we tend to build these narratives out of like one fluke event. And Messi, they lost to Germany. Germany was better. Gonzalo Higuain had a big chance. He missed it. Like, if he scores it, maybe they win. But this is the last chance for Messi. Argentina is the second favorite in the betting markets coming in. And Messi has never won a World Cup. He's won Copa America now, which he won last summer, which was a huge monkey off of his back, beating Brazil. Now they have a chance to win the World Cup, probably his last chance. He's getting up there in age. So that's the pressure on him. He does have 2 goals already. And they're likely to get out. We're recording this. They're likely to make the knockout stage, but the path isn't going to be very easy for them. So they may have to play, and they could play the U.S. actually if they win the group.
Boy, that would be something.
They would play they could play the Netherlands or the U.S. in the quarters, and then they could potentially play Brazil or Spain in the semis. So it's going to be a tough path, but Argentina has a real chance. Or by the time you're listening to this, they could have lost and they're already out. So we'll see.
I rest my case. I did read that Australia actually sent a team of people to uncurse the Australia national team over like a game in Africa or something. So I think we need to take this very seriously. I've read about cat bones being buried around Argentinian stadiums to both lift and give curses. So superstition, very, very powerful force. As far as forces that we can quantify a little bit, I'm going to actually parrot one of our traders who asked me to ask on his behalf. I don't know if you know Jason Pipkin. He's a great political gambler. And he was basically like, Keen Dog, what are you doing hosting a World Cup betting conversation? I don't, let's get real here. No one beats Premier League lines. It's apparently famously difficult to win EPL betting because there's just such a huge pool of people who are betting on it. So is there an actual sustainable strategy to do the same in the World Cup, just given that it's like literally the biggest thing that happens in human civilization? Like, is there a way to actually have an advantage doing this?
I think because it's such a small sample and because it's such a condensed tournament and it's so random and there's so much variance, it is very hard to know if you're beating the market. That's what I'll say, because, I've had an okay tournament, not a great tournament. I've been, kind of middling, right around even, but it could change depending on how a couple future positions come out. But I think there's still value to be had in the market. One of my favorite bets that I gave out on our podcast was Cody Gakpo, the Dutch star. to lead the tournament at 6-1 in Dutch goals. So who would be the highest scorer on the Netherlands? Well, their star striker was injured for the first 2 matches. He didn't play really. And Gakpo was clearly the next guy in line. He was priced at 6-1. He's got 3 goals. There are markets where you can exploit, I think, and where you can get at it. You know, when the U.S. opened in April, they were plus 135 to advance. And I said, that line is wrong. Like, they should be closer to even money, maybe a little bit odds on. And they ended up closing right around even money, and they do go through. So, like, you can find little edges, but I think if you're trying to bet the World Cup 10 minutes before games start, like, yeah, everybody's betting it. The market is very sharp. But even still, even if you're betting into a coin flip market and you don't have an edge, you can go through a really good period of winning or losing. And it really all comes down to a couple bounces. I mean, posts and finishing variance is so big in soccer on a week-to-week basis. In the Prem, there's 38 matches a year. In the World Cup, there's like 3-4 matches for most of these teams. So you don't know when the variance and the regression will even out. Teams tend to run even with their expected goals numbers over the long run. But over the course of 3 or 4 games, I mean, especially when it's so game state dependent, you know, you watch today, Iran did nothing for the first half. They go down, now they're attacking. You know, if you can't forecast that, like, you don't know how the game's going to play out. So I think it can be difficult.
You notice too, though, that the language of soccer just prices luck in, like chances on goal. I mean, when you kick a ball around the field, you'll hear players say, "Oh, that was just unlucky." I mean, it just seems like everyone knows that variance is going to be such a huge part of play.
It's the only sport where teams will. So I was at a bar in New York for the Wales USA game, and USA had a great move, almost scored. They didn't. And everybody starts clapping. And it is truly the only sport where you will hear fans clap after a team does not succeed in the ultimate goal, scoring, because they almost scored. You'll never see like an NBA team make a bunch of incredible passes and then miss the wide open 3, and then the fans will clap. You'll never see a baseball team, like a guy hits one in the gap and they gun him at the plate, and you'll never see the team be like, "Oh, we almost scored." But in soccer, your team will cheer, your fans will cheer because you almost scored a goal, because you're doing a good job creating chances. I think that's really the beauty of variance and the beauty of kind of finishing, and how it is ultimately random. I mean, a guy can line one up from 30 yards, and whether it's a guy on Saudi Arabia who stinks or Harry Kane, sometimes they hit it into the top corner like the Saudi Arabia guy did to beat Argentina.
Yeah, I remember a kick like that from the Czech Republic onto the U.S. in, I think, 2006. I think it was a 38-meter strike or something like that. It was just bonkers.
Yeah, you just tip your cap.
Right. Like, how do you defend against that? Let me test another theory. So Vanilla Vice, another trader, has a working theory that sort of small countries that people don't think about a lot are kind of systemically underpriced in betting markets. So I guess that would say that like Morocco or Tunisia or Iran or something like that like these countries are a little bit underpriced in betting markets. Do you see any meat on the bone there, or does that just sort of sound like a novelty play to you?
I think it's case by case. You know, in the case of Morocco, there's a few teams I've been wrong about so far. Denmark thought they'd be better. They've been poor. Uruguay thought they'd be better. They've been poor. Morocco was one team I had circled. You know, we use underlying numbers in these African qualifiers, and we're like, okay, this Morocco team is like kind of cooking with gas. Like, their underlying numbers are very impressive. Then they get a group with Belgium and Croatia. And you're like, everybody thinks of Belgium and they think, oh yeah, that Belgium team, they were so good the last decade. But I think the one bias is that teams, if you're a casual fan who hops in to become a world international fan every couple of years, you may miss the underlying things that have changed within a squad. So people remember Belgium in 2014, they whooped the US. 2018, they got to the semifinals, but all those players are still playing for Belgium, and they're all over 30 now. And that team, you know, we said like, this team could be fraud, like this team could be in trouble. And Morocco beat them. And now Belgium, if they don't win against Croatia on Thursday, is out. So, and I don't think they're going to. So, you know, Belgium is a team.
Golden generation, and it's golden years now.
And now it's over, right? Yeah. And I think that's where people can be late. They can be late to arrive to a team who's on the rise, and they can be late to fall on a team who's about to fall off. And I think Belgium is like a classic example. And then like the other end of that is, I don't know, maybe Ecuador. Like, they didn't go through, but they completely revamped their squad and had a very impressive group stage, even though they ended up going out to Senegal today.
I mean, it's almost a shame. The most exciting part of all these tournaments, I think, is like right now. It's in the kind of early to mid stage when anything is still possible. And they almost like the excitement almost gets sapped out of them as they go on and the sort of storylines are clear and you sort of know what you're working with. But it's very magical at this point where just so much can happen and so much of the world is concerned with what's going on.
I mean, there's so many countries that don't really have a realistic chance of winning the World Cup. But for them, like getting out of the group and advancing to the knockout stage is like a national celebration. Saudi Arabia having a national holiday because they beat Argentina. Like those kind of things are what make it special. You know, a country like Morocco potentially advancing, Senegal advancing to the next round. After in 2018, Senegal didn't advance because of a fifth tiebreaker, which was which team had amassed more yellow cards in the first three matches,
Jesus.
and Japan went through. So like there's these little things. They felt like they got screwed 4 years ago and they made up for it today. And now they're in the knockout stage. Are they going to win the World Cup? No. But just getting out is incredible. And those are the storylines that you're just like, this is awesome. You know,
Yeah.
The big favorite goes down. Who takes them out? You know, Japan beating Germany, Saudi Arabia beating Argentina, Morocco beating Belgium. So all these things can happen.
So, okay, so let's talk about whether or not the thing we all want to happen will happen. This weekend, the United States will play the Netherlands, as we teased at the beginning of the podcast, as literally every news source is probably telling you right now. I checked on Smarkets, and it looks like this is not great odds, long odds for the United States. I think the markets have it priced at about a 25% chance. So I don't know. Is there any good juju? Is there any like anti-curse? Could someone maybe curse the Netherlands between now and the game? On the like, what's going on here? Should we just give up or just
absolutely not? No, I think they have a real chance. I'm looking for the line now. I saw Netherlands open minus 115, which is about 53%. That's to win in regulation.
Yeah.
So the U.S. would be about 47-ish% to get it either to win in regulation or to get it to extra time. The to advance line generally will be priced around minus 160, 170 then based on that number. So maybe minus 180. So that would roughly put the United States at 38%, give or take. Don't hold me to that because we're recording that before I've seen a market. But yeah, I mean, I think it's like a 60-40 proposition that the Netherlands goes through. Like I mentioned before, they haven't been that impressive. A lot of Dutch people I know that, and a couple Dutch smart soccer fans that I know are very unhappy with how their wingbacks are playing and how their midfield is playing. And those are the two areas where I think we're at our best. I think Tyler Adams, like I mentioned, and McKennie, like they're better ball winners than what the Dutch have. And then if their fullbacks are not playing up to it, like we can exploit them there. They do have an excellent striking pair with Gakpo and Memphis. That's going to be a problem. And their defensive line, like their center backs are very good. Virgil van Dijk plays for Liverpool. Most people know him. But yeah, I think they're absolutely live to get it into extra time. And if they also have goalie questions, which in these tournaments is so important. Their goalie is a little bit of a question mark. Ours is one of the best shot stoppers in the world. I think that makes a big difference in these tournaments where one little bounce, one little goal, one moment can change everything. So I think they're live and they got a real chance to advance.
Okay, great. So I want to maybe hang a lantern on something you said. So the bet is different. I noticed this and I was trying to make sense of it. The bet is different if to win in overtime versus winning outright. So USA may be looking better. I'm checking again, and Smarkets does indeed look like a 60-40 chance to advance. Let me ask you, if you watch the game, you're no doubt aware of the fact that Christian Pulisic. How do I say Christian Pulisic? How do I say his name? Pulisic. It's like I squint at it on screen and I just can't figure it out. Christian Pulisic looking injured. What's his face? Sargent, kind of the ginger guy, possibly injured for the game too. When those injury reports come out, does this line move unfavorably towards the United States, or do you think it could go the other way? Let's say maybe they can play.
I think if Pulisic is out, that's a big loss for the United States. Sargent is less so. Sargent played really well today, but there's nothing Sargent necessarily does that they couldn't get from Ferreira. Berhalter keeps playing Haji Wright, who stinks, but Ferreira's pretty good in possession, can press a little bit. I think him to Sargent is pretty much a wash. What I'd really like to see is Gio Reyna play. He's a star at Dortmund, but we don't know his fitness. It's been like an ongoing storyline of this World Cup. Everybody wants him to play.
He's like the horse that's like descendant of the two Kentucky Derby winning horses. Like I feel like you got to bet on that guy.
Exactly, and he's awesome. I mean, you watch him and he makes slaloming runs through defenses and beats defenders with ease, and he's awesome to watch, but he's always hurt. And so we don't know how fit he is. That's going to be really important. If we don't Pulisic or Reyna, the transitional element of this team is kind of beat. That's a problem. I think that takes a lot of our quality going forward out of it. Probably had to be a more defensive play for extra time, try to get it to pens type of approach. That would be a big concern. So I want to see that Pool 6 is going to be okay before I put a bet on the US. But it is important to know if you're betting the World Cup, now that we're in the knockout stage here, all bets are settled in 90 minutes on money lines and totals. So if you bet Netherlands money line and it's an over 2.5 goals and it's 1-1 at the end of regulation, they go into an extra 30 minutes and the Dutch score and they win 2-1, you still don't win your bet. The bet is settled at 90 minutes. Once they blow the full-time whistle and they say we're going to play extra time, that's when the bet settles. That's one thing that people don't know because they don't bet soccer that much. But if you bet over 2.5 and it's 1-1 and they score a third goal in extra time, not injury time, extra time, that bet is still a loss. So that's important to know. The draw would be the winner in those situations.
Don't be a dummy. No dummies.
Yeah, read your rules.
Yeah, rules. No rules, cucks. Okay, so let's just finish on the big question of who is going to win the World Cup. Where will people just be taking the next month to just collectively drink in public places and paint themselves in the colors of their flag? The favorite from where I've seen is Brazil. I feel like Brazil always threatening to win a World Cup. I don't think they've even conceded a goal yet this year. On Smarkets, they're listed at about 27% odds. Is that right? I mean, you've sort of been saying a lot of wisdom about these teams is maybe not right. So should we just start with asking, is that right that Brazil should be the favorite? And would you take that bet?
I wouldn't bet it. I wouldn't bet it because I think their path is setting up to be very difficult to win it. Because they're looking at potentially Uruguay in the round of 16, very difficult team, given the round they're in. Then they're looking at Spain in the quarters and potentially Argentina in the semis, and then either like France or England in the final. Like they could have to beat all of them, and they could. Like they're that good. They have so much depth. They played Switzerland yesterday, and you're like, holy shit! Like they're bringing in guys, Martinelli, Jesus, like starters for Champions League teams. Don't even start for Brazil. They're so good.
Wow, so
much depth. So that's the thing. Brazil is the favorite. They're rightly the favorite. They've played like a favorite thus far. 3 goals to the good, 2 wins. But my pick from the beginning and from a betting point of view was Spain, and I'm sticking by it. I think, and this is more so the markets. The markets coming into the tournament, it was basically like Brazil, Argentina, France, England, Spain. Like those were in that order. I thought Spain should have been closer. I thought Spain was the second best team in the world coming in. I thought they were better than England, better than Argentina for sure, better than France. If you were basing it on who's played the best so far, I would probably say Brazil is 1, France is 2, Spain is 3. I still think those are the 3 best teams on form right now. But again, we're setting up where France is going to play England in the quarters and Spain is going to play Brazil in the quarters. So those are going to be high-profile tilts where, anything can go. But Spain has the youth. They're starting 2 teenagers in midfield, and they're incredible. The start of the new generation of insane Spanish passers.
Yep. It's like a different sport they play there.
It is. It really is. When you watch them, it's like, holy cow.
Yeah.
Yep. And they have a pretty solid defense, a good goalie. The striker's a question mark too, but their starting striker hasn't started the first 2 matches because he hasn't been fully fit yet, but he scored off the bench both games. And now if he's able to grow into his fitness here and start matches, I think Spain is the third team. And I think Spain, I'm still happy with my Spain position. I got them plus 900 or plus 850, plus 900 before the tournament. I'm still feeling good about that. But again, like they're going to play Brazil in the quarters, so it's going to be really tough.
Yeah, that's tough sledding. Yeah, they're at about a 12% chance over on Smarkets. I saw them. I got the chance to see them play Germany, and literally, they were just like running laps around Germany. I understand the match was not quite that decisive, but there was one team that looked a lot better, and that team was Spain. So I applaud that. Do you have a degen pick or something like that for people who just want to bet $100 on something stupid and hope to get rich? Would the U.S. be a good degen pick? I guess would be one way of phrasing that, but perhaps Saudi Arabia or something.
Yeah, well, if they offer to make the semifinals,
yeah,
I would be interested in the U.S. there.
Yeah, do we have an easy draw?
Well, like I said, the Netherlands have not been that impressive in this tournament, and I think the way the U.S. is defended, they've held all 3 opponents under 1 expected goal, non-penalty expected goal. So that's very impressive, especially when you consider they played England, who has now dominated Iran and Wales and looked pretty pedestrian against the U.S. Going forward. So I think the Netherlands, are vulnerable, and we talked about who the draw could open up to be. So they would play. They're playing the Netherlands for sure. They would then, based on how if the favorites win tomorrow, Wednesday, it would be either Argentina or Denmark.
I
Neither
mean,
team has looked that impressive.
yeah, I would love to play
Argentina
Denmark.
is very good. They're obviously better than the United States, but the way Argentina has played going forward, they created 0.29 expected goals against Mexico. It was an embarrassing performance. They won 2-0. Messi had an incredible moment, but we have the kind of defensive midfield that can at least challenge Messi. And like I said, Argentina has not been that impressive. So if you wanted to take a long shot, maybe US to make the semis, I don't see them winning it. I think it would be too much. They'd run out of gas, not enough depth, like you said. But a realistic DGen bet, US to make the semis, because I think they're absolutely live to do it now.
Okay. I mean, to argue against your take there, I mean, I guess Argentina is cursed. We've established that. I do think that FIFA and referees just in general despise English-speaking countries. I don't think you can explain just the broad curse over all Commonwealth nations without that. Maybe like you also can't explain who does the bribing of the referees without considering that too. So I don't know, man. Maybe unstoppable force meets an immovable object if the U.S. and Argentina have to play a game. Maybe both teams lose. Maybe the stadium gets hit by a meteor. I'm not sure I'm buying it right now.
Yeah, I think we'd have major problems with England or France in a knockout tournament. I'm just going to avoid that whole thing because I don't know. People said the tournament was going to be rigged for Qatar, and then like 5 minutes in, there was a super controversial Ecuador goal that just got VAR'd off, and nobody knew why. And they were like, it's rigged. And then they watched the rest of the match and they were like, oh no, it's not rigged. They just suck. And then they lost all of their matches. So I'm like out on the rigged narrative. But FIFA is very corrupt. So I think they'd actually want to help Messi.
Yeah.
Make sure he gets through because it's good for the ratings, good for the money to have him in the semis and the final. But like I said, Argentina could go down. And if Argentina didn't win the group and it was like Poland, Mexico versus Denmark. Yeah, we're better than all of those teams right now.
Yeah,
so I think they got a live shot here.
I love it.
Or they could just lose to Holland.
Yeah. Or like, let's just be realistic. Like 2 of our best players could be injured this weekend and it could just be a really boring game. And we'll just say, well, at least we had that one moment in Iran. Okay. So let's go worst case scenario and then we'll just sort of leave it on this. So if the US loses this weekend to the Netherlands, should people just stop following this tournament, or is there still joy to be found in the rest of the world celebrating and sobbing as the goals come in as the goals go?
Oh, absolutely. Stay tuned because the way that the groups have played out this year, there has not been a true contender that's gone down yet. That could change, but Belgium may go out, but like they were never a true contender in the eyes of most smart soccer fans. But we're setting up, and this is the potential. If the chalk holds and the favorites win over the next, there will be an upset. But if the chalk were to hold, the potential quarterfinals of the World Cup would be Netherlands, Argentina, Spain, Brazil, France, England, Germany, Portugal.
Wow.
Like, I get it. Like, people don't love soccer, but like, that's as good as it's going to get. And that's damn good. So the way they drew these groups out and the way that the favorites have taken care of business for the most part, and there had to be some breaks. I mean, if Japan had beat Costa Rica, Germany would have been done. But Japan loses. So now Germany, the door's open. Portugal's taking care of business. So you could have a blockbuster quarterfinal if the favorites take care of business. Somebody will lose, but the potential for that foursome right there is pretty impressive.
Yeah, it sounds like one of those March Madnesses where like Duke, Kentucky, UCLA, and Kansas are all good, and you're like, all right, I'm just gonna be hungover at work like pretty much for a month. So this is let's go. So
we all love upsets until like Denmark is playing Croatia in the semis, and you're like, yeah, it's cool, but like, come on, give me like France, Germany here.
Yeah. Upsets are overrated. Totally overrated. All right. Well, Anthony, you've been good to join us. I know that I probably don't sound like an expert on soccer, and it's because I'm not. But thank you for bringing us up to speed, and we'll be having a great time watching the tournament and maybe playing off some of your insights. So thanks again for joining the show.
Thanks for having me.